That's nice. Mm.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late today. So this is the advisory design panel for September 21st. As I mentioned earlier, Tony is typically chairing the advisory design panel meetings this term, and he's unable to make it. So if we could have a member volunteer to chair the meeting, that would be great, and then we can get started. I'd just like to remind everyone to please use the microphones. Mary is joining us. Hi, Mary, via Zoom today. So it's extremely hard to hear when you're watching it over the internet without the microphones.
Hello, everyone.
So I think we can call the meeting to order, and we'll first we should do the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting. Okay. So did everyone have a chance to read through the minutes? Okay, from our last meeting, which was back on May 18th, right? Anyone have any issues? Okay, so are we in favor of adopting the minutes? Do you have from our last meeting? And okay, so sorry, Dariush, and then sorry,
Bruce.
Bruce, thank you, Bruce. Second, the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting. Okay, perfect. So then moving on, I think we can move right into the business of today. So I'll ask the presenting panelist, do they use the, yeah, you can come forward, and maybe if you could please say who you are and who you are representing, whether you're the client or the architect or whomever, that would be helpful for us. Thank you.
Yeah, did it hear? Okay, there we go. So thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Kyle, for helping us through this actually development permit application. I know it's been a long road, but you guys have been extremely efficient and prompt on your questions and inquiries and, of course, direction to us. So we hope that we do our part, of course, to bring a very suitable project, of course, to Parksville. Coming here, this is actually, to be honest, this is my first time, and Adisha's first time in Parksville, and just coming in here, it's a beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. So we certainly want to make sure that our project certainly adds and enhances, of course, the community. But sorry to go on to that. So I'm representing the client. My name is James from CTM Design Services. Our client is PR Petroleum, and they rebranded their, I guess, their gas water facilities, which they normally produce, into Canco. So their primary colors now are orange. So they've done quite a bit. So far, they've produced 85 gas stations since 2014. Most of which are located in the BC area. A lot are in the I guess the middle portions of BC, Prince George area. Beautiful place. I saw one in McLeish Lake, right next to that lake. So there's a lot coming down there. They're coming down to the mainlands. And then, of course, they saw an opportunity here in Parksville on the island. So they're ecstatic about being in here as well, in the Wembley Mall area. So again, I'm from CTM Design Services. I've been with them for 10 years. Adis behind me is our architect. He's been there for over 15 years. And of course, we've represented a number of different clients. We have a lot of experience specifically with the gas bar products, gas bar designs and projects. We do have multiple engineers on staff, structural, electrical, mechanical, but most importantly, petroleum. Our petroleum engineer, Don Jonason, I like saying his name a lot because he does a lot for us. He's been in the industry for 25 years. So he had a lot of experience. And of course, he's quite the outdoorsman. So he does, of course, have the environment in hand. So he always tells us that we're non-compromising on anything with regards to spill containment, things like that. So he takes things very seriously, especially when it comes to petroleum products. And of course, to my left here is Patricia. They have a lot of experience with commercial landscaping. They've done a lot for us, a lot for our projects. We're happy to have her on board, and she has a full staff, a very big company that she manages as well. Getting back into the project itself, of course, it is our project itself. It will have a building that consists of a C-store convenience store, Canco branded. And adjoining to it is a QSR. And the intent there is that it's going to be a Tim Hortons. And of course, it's located in the parking lot area of the Wembley Mall. One thing that we wanted to consider, of course, with our site layouts moving on is of course, considering that there is going to be a Tim Hortons here, is vehicle stacking. Of course, when we think of Tim Hortons, we think of cars spilling out onto every road that's adjacent to it. So that's one reason why, I guess, with the consideration of the limited space that we have up there, we wanted a reasonably sized restaurant and also an accompanying reasonable sized convenience store. But you know, we of course, Tim Hortons wants a dual drive-through, but we indicated that given the limited size, we're going to have to limit ourselves to just a single lane drive-through. But how that works and how that achieved is going through the site here. Of course, the existing is on the left on the screen here, and on the right is proposed. So I know it's really quite black and white here, but the drive-through menu board is near the end of the building on the left. So of course you enter on the right side of the building. The intention there is that we'll stack all the way to, I guess, the canopy, and you see that there's a little bump out to the right. That's intended so that the queuing can flow around the canopy, meanwhile still not interrupt any kind of service, any kind of fueling service for the canopy itself. And of course, it does loop around. The intention with that, it'll loop around in front of the parking, the far side parking near the entry of the Wembley Mall area. And so once we get to that point, we're at 14 cars, 14 or 15 cars. And that's typically the standard of what Tim Hortons likes to see in their dual drive-throughs. And sorry to get right back into it, but I guess we can get right to, I guess, landscaping and our approach with that.
Hi, it's Pat Campbell, PMG. The trees proposed for the mall are different than the ones that are in the street trees along the highway in front of Canadian Tire. But because the liquid amber, or liquid amber styracofolia, aren't technically xeric, that we moved to doing hawthorn trees along this stretch of the highway. But we felt that there was a whole range of types of trees in the existing mall, some of them dead, but there are the sweet gum, the liquid amber, there's ash trees, there are some hawthorn trees, there's purple leaf plum. It's really not a mall where everything is the same. So we thought that going with something different might just give a different character to this end of the mall. And we are really concerned that they are able to survive after they get after they are, there for a few years, that you could turn off the irrigation and have it be a healthy landscape. So in the islands along the internal part of the parking lot, we've got a particularly drought tolerant maple species that's a round-headed tree that will project some shade onto that asphalt. We have at the garbage enclosure, we have Douglas fir. So again, that's very drought tolerant. We have a significant sized islands so that they can be provide the trees with lots of soil. All the shrubs are basically bulletproof varieties of shrubs. So we've got mugo pine, which is consistent with kind of the structure of the other parts of the mall that looks really healthy. Those are those little pines that do well everywhere. They don't need any water, and they don't have any water, and are doing well on the mall already. But I don't think we're doing any more of the shrubs that are there, because currently there's Nandina, which is heavenly bamboo. Instead of that, we've got one that will look quite similar to that, the purple barberry. We've got another flowering shrub, a rock rose, and alpine currant, a native species that does quite well with no water. And then we're supplementing that with around the edges where we want it to be lower, 2 feet under, because we don't really want to obscure views of cars. We want it to be very safe. So we've got things like autumn joy sedum, yarrow, native, again, pearly everlasting, which is a little taller, but it's in the background. What else? We have, globe thistle and blue fescue. So all xeric planting, and a perimeter planting consistent along the whole edge of the highway where the trees are planted, along the north side of the garbage enclosure and all of the islands where it shows squiggly lines and the green area. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. All right, okay. Yes, go ahead, please. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, my name is Adis. I am an architect, and I work for CTM Design Services for last, just like James mentioned, for last 15 years. And thanks, James and Patricia. And so they discussed a little bit about the landscaping sites, and then I might probably cover about the architectural, the building form and character of this building, and how we came up with this, form and then building design. So when we first designed this building, so this is like the two clients, corporate clients, they have their own standard and their own building features, and then and that's usually they come and they're just going to apply, because that's what we've been doing over and over again. So when we discussed with the client, so we looked at the City of Parksville Development Permit Area Guideline. So we're under number 5. So we looked at those, and then we also looked at the surrounding buildings, and then so how we're gonna actually integrate the client standard, and then at the same time with the architectural guideline of the area. So by doing that, we're trying to achieve so using some exterior material, we will like some of like there is this so for the Tim Hortons and the Canco, and we're trying to integrate those standard material with the surrounding, and then that's what we're trying to achieve. And so we do not want to create like something different from what was on the area, so so that the design we're building is going to kind of blend with the surrounding. So that was the whole idea, trying to achieve meeting the architectural guideline, also the client's requirements. So most of the material we we propose a standard brick panel, aluminum panels, and then the hardy board. And yeah, so we're trying to minimize the number of, even though there's a requirement from the client to add more materials, but so we're trying to minimize it, and then just, a good architecture. And that's kind of the thought behind the building form and character. So I think that's pretty much all about the architectural form and character. So James, you want to add more? This one?
Okay, thank you so much, Adis. Thank you so much, Patricia. One thing I kind of left out, I guess, with the site is, of course, considering that this is a petroleum site, petroleum project, there's a thought, of course, storm runoff. So our engineers, and of course, what we specified, actually, that I didn't mention actually in our application was we're including an oil grit separator or oil water separator. So that's actually going to be located near the canopy, I guess in between the canopy and the far side of the parking stalls, I guess near the entrance of the Wembley Mall area. There's a catch basin there, and that's actually potted in such a way that it'll contain at least 1,000 liters per second should there be a spill. So that, of course, that can be removed, but at the same time, it goes into anything beyond that will enter the oil water separator, and the oil water separator will contain that oil, and it'll sort of separate it out. And that 1,000 liters per second is pretty standard across the nation. It's something that we use across the nation. And above that as well, I mean, it's of course the existing is a parking lot. It is hardscaped, but of course our proposed development, in terms of what our grading designer, our civil engineer has implemented, was it actually is better than the existing in such a way that all of the surface runoff will be contained on a pond, in various ponds throughout the site. And the catch basins were strategically located, of course, through the drive-through area. But the overall flow rate is actually much less than existing. I shouldn't say much less, slightly less. I don't want to over that. But the intention, I guess, with the catch basin as well, they're positioned, of course, strategically through the site where there's a lot of vehicle traffic in those locations, specifically through the drive-through area. And of course, the catch basin kind of in between the canopy and the parking stalls. So there'll be limited pedestrian traffic should there be a 100-year storm or so on and so forth. And these, of course, these a better illustration, I guess, of the landscaping that will be provided. And of course, on the top right there is the Canadian Tire that was recently done. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, yeah, I meant, yeah, sorry, this picture on the top right there, my apologies. Yeah, so that shows a lot of the foliage that was recently done, I guess, in the new Canadian Tire there, and as well as the Save on Foods. And then the bottom right there is kind of showing, I guess, our intent with what Patricia was mentioning, of course, with the extent of our landscaping. And you can see there's a lot of the incorporations of the red and the pinks, of course, that it, I guess, incorporates or matches what was done in the existing Canadian Tire Save on Foods. And there will be irrigation. There's an irrigation plan that we provided. Of course, it's underground sprinklers, but they will pop up, and of course, they will provide the watering required for these species. And of course, it is variable, and considering that a lot of these species, all the species are actually indeed drought tolerant, as Patricia mentioned, so watering should be very minimal. And as Adis was kind of mentioning, I guess, with the building design, one thing that Sarah and Kyle had provided in terms of a comment, of course, was weather protection at the entries. So that's something that we've revised. Sorry, I don't show it here in this rendering, but we do include one now in our DP drawings where we will have a canopy that protects the entrances. And further with what Adis was mentioning, so these are the pictures, of course, of the various companies and projects that are already located in the Wembley Mall area. You can see here, there's the Happy Jack's restaurant, which I wouldn't mind trying out later on. But yeah, so a lot of their finishes actually include, I guess, horizontal siding, if not predominantly horizontal siding. And we'll keep that in mind for later. But and also Canadian Tire here, very symbolic of their brand. They have ACM panels here, and a lot of that have those reveals in between these panels. And I point that out because I guess some of the other areas of the Wembley Mall, of course, there's a Bank of Montreal that has stucco, but they also use a heavy amount of reveals. Also their ACM, which is kind of familiar with their branding, and also the ice rink nearby, stucco, but they also have a high amount of reveals, and hence why we've kind of incorporated it into ours as well. We don't see it that much in this rendering. However, we do see a lot of the horizontal siding that's used on the top here to incorporate that of the Happy Jacks nearby. Here, this is also going to be a hardy fiber cement product. So there's not too much variation in terms of finishes because a lot of it will be hardy siding, but they come in different products. So of course, horizontal metal siding, and then they also have something called reveal panels. So those reveals will mimic that of what we see in Canadian Tire, and of course the adjacent projects with stucco and a high amount of reveals. And as we're on the slide, you can see here on the left is actually a picture of this material board. And I can pass that around. So these are actually the standard finishes that TBL normally sees. So we normally see in Tim Hortons. And being Tim Hortons, and of course, that's something that they mentioned to us, is that they're very specific with their standards. Unfortunately, we couldn't I guess, branch too far away from what they've implemented. So then, considering that this is a relatively new design from Tim Hortons, so we will start to see a lot of the Tim Hortons incorporate this. So what you see here is actually the black finish. I guess this will be, I guess, what they call a black highlight. Of course, so that accentuates the entrance of the Tim Hortons. It's very prominent. It's on the corner of the building, of course. So as you enter, I guess, the Wembley Mall area. Thank you so much. As you enter the Wembley Mall area, of course, you'll do another right, of course, but you'll first see this entrance. So Tim Hortons is very prominent. That entrance is very prominent. There's one aspect, I guess, with regards to parking. So there'll be parking designated on the other side of this drive aisle, specifically for Tim Hortons patrons. And then moving on to the Canco side, this is where we had a lot more flexibility. So this client was a lot more flexible with adopting our comments with regards to the shopping number 5 development permit guidelines, incorporating other projects that are in the adjacent area. So I'll pass these finishes off as well. Sorry, the glue didn't hold. No need to get that. So one thing to point out, though, that's something that that was introduced initially, were these canopies here that kind of wrapped around the building. We see it a little bit on the side here. So that was actually intended to be a trellis. But Sarah made a great point that we want to protect the entrance. So although we maintain a trellis, I guess, around, this corner of this building, the front here, it will be solid. So there won't be any rain. It'll be protected from the elements. Very preliminary right now, but this is the basic footprint of our store, of our building. That was it. All right. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation. From the chair to the city staff, I have a question, just as a kind of a reminder of how we normally conduct our meetings. Normally I have every panel member speak to their concerns or ask their questions, and then we summarize at the end? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to our panel members for their comments, questions, and I think they can speak directly to you, and if they have specific questions to answer. And actually, I have one more question for staff, for city staff. I just wondered if you could remind us, if we are supposed to know, the influence of the building checklist on the development. So I'm just curious about how the scores impact the approval process, I suppose, the development permit. Thank you.
So the sustainability and accessibility checklists were implemented by council several years ago. It predates my experience at the city. So I would say somewhere in the early 2000s is when they originated. And they're there for council's benefit when they're considering the application. And they're also used as sort of a tool to get the applicant to sort of think about some of those options and ways that they can enhance their proposal as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, maybe I will look across the room, and Dariush, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you very much for presentation. I have a couple of questions. First, I will start with the parking calculation. This is actually to the staff. I assume the parking requirement for this project combined with the rest of the mall and calculated overall? And do we looking for any parking variance, or we are meeting the requirements?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That information is still outstanding. So we're waiting to get a complete combined parking analysis of the entire mall site, looking at all of the floor areas that are currently there. With the site itself, if we're just looking at the gas station site in isolation, they are providing enough parking in that area, as well as in part of the aisle that's dedicated towards it. That being said, they are also removing some parking stalls that are already under where the current gas station in Tim Hortons is proposed. So we will be waiting for that information to come in to do an analysis and make sure that we have enough parking.
Okay, and we may or may not require the parking variance for overall
Yeah, without having the
we don't
information,
know that.
I'm not too sure what that could look like right now.
Thank you.
Oh, I will just say one more thing, that James and I have talked that until we have that information, we can't issue the development permit. So we will be sort of putting it on the side of the desk for a little bit until we can have those numbers.
Thank you. Next question is, obviously this is a gas station, a big truck moving, bringing the petroleum. Can we look at the site plan? Because majority of my question gonna be just in the site. So look at site plan is the best.
This one?
No, the one that has landscaping actually was
gotcha.
nicer to see. Yeah, that's the one. Is it any turnaround study completed for the trucks bringing the basically petroleum?
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. Just a
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So usually, this is what we call, this is like a vehicle-oriented site.
Okay.
So we do have a software which is real time how the track is going. This gets the gas station mostly track.
Yeah. common.
So there's certain requirement for that. And then how about
Thank you. That's answered my question.
Yeah, so of course, right. It's kind of on both sides, but we won't stay on the pole.
Okay. Yeah, that's satisfying me. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it's all studied. And the last one is, really these projects designed for cars, not for the pedestrian, and that's my biggest concern. I don't have any other concern. I think people, they're gonna park, go and have a gas, leave their car there and go to the either Tim Horton or C-store. I think we should extend that let down with the different type of the finishes to bring it to the gas, to just create a little bit, clear idea. People, they walk from in this direction, and other direction, there is no sidewalk connecting West Island Highway to Mall. We do need to have some sort of the pedestrian too. I see in one of the very newest edition, you had the, sidewalk connection between the end of the sidewalk from the Tim Horton to that landscape area. I do suggest maybe we can cross also that line up and go to all the way to the West Island. People, they're gonna cross these landscape regardless. Let's let them guide them where to, wherever. That's my suggestion. Maybe we can find somewhere else, but I suggest to have some sort of the sidewalk connection to the Island Highway. Create it easier people to basically connect to the mall and these stores as well, Tim Horton. Not everybody come with the car. Some people, they walk. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Right, thank you for your comment.
Do you want to add anything for clarification around the
Yes,
pedestrian connectivity?
You bring up a great point. Walking across landscaping is not certainly ideal. Just thinking about realistically where people will be walking from, especially behind the parking stalls. And that's just it. So they'll be walking behind the parking stalls. Actually, when you're mentioning it, we may be able to perhaps bring up, have a speed bump incorporating, like a sidewalk, right? Specifically aligned with the back of those vehicles' parking stalls, the angle parking stalls. So it's designated and a little more pronounced that it is a pedestrian walk towards the Tim Hortons. And of course, that also acts as a speed bump. So it's a little safer for the pedestrians as well. Vehicles will slow down. Hopefully.
Can we then speed bump to say also, like you say, different finish, some sort of standard concrete kind of good pedestrian sign, so that that can be done.
Okay, thank you. Mary, did you have a question? Yes, I see you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask that if everybody does use the mic, and including I know that they did answer a question there with the mic, but the previous question wasn't answered with the microphone, and it's very difficult for me to hear that otherwise. And other than that, I'm just listening. I nod, and I love the selection of plants. I'll say that right now. I know them all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so did you just that if anyone's speaking to come to the mic, please? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to Bruce. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Just on Farouche's point, I think he was talking about a sidewalk on the West Island Highway itself, and of course there isn't one, and there isn't a requirement for one, and there is no crosswalk from the south side to the north side of that intersection, and unless you get the Highways Department involved, you're not going to get one. So as much as we'd like to see pedestrian access closer to the crosswalk and sidewalk on the road, I don't see it happening. There is a sidewalk on the south side of the driveway entry, and people are expected to walk all the way up the Canadian Tire, go over and all the way back down again. And that's outside the scope of what you're doing. So that's, I'm just mentioning it. That while it would be really nice, it's outside the scope of this project, I believe. My first question, landscaping. You show a very large sodded area, sodded lawn. How do you propose to keep that green? You've seen outside here. We've been in a drought for 6 to 8 months. There is no watering allowed. So your intent is just to let it go brown like everybody else's? Okay, and you're aware of the grade changes from your gas bar parking lot down to the road? It's about
Yes,
45 degrees.
There's a retaining wall there that keeps the grass level enough to be lawn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are including a
yeah.
retaining wall just outside of the hedge?
Yes,
Okay,
on the northwest there.
or
Yeah,
southeast, I'm looking at.
yes.
The grade is worse right at the mall entry sign, right by the driveway there.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah, there is a grading plan and it does
Okay.
make the grass level and it will be brown. It's not
Okay.
irrigated.
you didn't consider indigenous grasses of some kind rather than
No.
a lawn? No?
No.
Okay,
Just to keep with the whole look of the mall, it's all brown lawn. It's
Okay.
not, hydroseeded rough grass and wildflowers or anything like that.
okay. That was my only landscape issue, other than, is it within the contract or will it be within Canco's contract to keep the landscaping up? Or do you just plant it and let it go?
Well, I'm not sure who's doing the maintenance on the mall.
Okay,
But, it needs to
Current-
be maintained and it needs to be there entirely
Yeah.
after a year in order to get
okay.
your maintenance bond back.
Because opposite where you've shown your landscaping at the parking, the
Yeah.
mall parking, on the other side closer to the mall, there's similar landscape curb areas and they're just dirt. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
So I guess it was probably
I don't
something
know
originally
why,
planted.
I don't know why that's
Yeah,
that way.
it's been let go. So if it's up
Yeah.
to the mall, it probably won't happen. But
Yeah.
I'm, again, just,
But there are other places that I think are older. The Canadian Tire is older, is it not? Or is that newer? Anyway,
the whole
there's
mall's the
still,
same age as far as I know.
yeah, well, the ones at the other end of the mall
Yeah.
are all alive and
Yeah.
doing well.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
or
So,
well enough. Some of it's not doing terribly well. but-
okay. That was my only landscape issue. And the building itself, I know you want the two spaces, the proposed Tim Hortons and the C store, the actual Canco store,
Yeah.
to have their own separate look, but they both have the same kind of brick cladding. I just thought maybe they could be slightly different. I know in the mall, they've used some faux stone rather than brick on the stores, the smaller stores. That's just comment one, just for more variability. And also the parts of the facade that go up past the roof appear to be just like, the old saloon type storefront where it's got no depth to it, right? It's almost just an extended sign. Just wondering if there's any way you could actually turn the corners back as they've done in the mall. If you look at is it the Red Apple store? They've got the similar kind of pop-up, but it actually returns a certain distance. So it looks like a building feature rather than a sign.
Hmm.
That's not on.
James, can you just turn the microphone back on?
No, there's an on button. The red. No, the red light has to be on it right behind the speaker. So one with.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
All right.
That's a very great comment, Bruce, and that's something that actually we will incorporate, I think, right? Thinking about, you're right. It looks like just a wall, parapet wall to go straight up, but to give it to be a separate element, to incorporate, I guess, a look where you're having two buildings within a or one building within another building.
Mhm.
Having 4-foot returns is something that we should
Yeah.
we for sure
Yeah,
consider.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
And in the Tim Hortons corner case, I mean, that really does look like signage. And it might be, I mean, I don't know the signage bylaws, it might be a little large. If you could do this, I realize it's a whole different architectural element. It's kind of almost a beam that comes up and around. So I'm not sure it's valid in that corner, but certainly in the brick pop-up it is. You can just take another look at it. It's hard to tell what the edge condition is at the Tim Hortons signage, whether it is just signage or whether it's meant to be part of the building popping up.
Right. Yeah. So that sign itself, you're right. It does seem a little bit large. I mean, this is somewhat of a rendering. It'll be most likely, it will certainly abide by the sign bylaw when it comes to it. That Tim Hortons sign, and of course, the parapet heights may be adjusted to accommodate the sign size. So it's relatively the same scale per se, right? But certainly not much less than what because we want to achieve, of course, a character to the building. So make the entrances profound. So we try to eliminate that warehouse look, straight feel, I guess,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, we'll certainly be mindful, of course, with the sign bylaw in terms of size of the fascia signs.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I know you commented a bit on the brick and the stone. They're a little different, I guess. Yeah. So the brick, I guess, for the Tim Hortons, I guess it's more, I guess, on the fascia itself. The stone, I guess, for the entrance, it is a little bit of a brick, and you're right. But it's a little bit more on the gray side, I guess. I know
Okay.
it's not.
Yeah,
the
I couldn't
best
really
shot
tell
there.
on the rendering.
Yeah, so it is a different finish.
Okay.
I know the one in the Tim Hortons here is a little bit more glazed. I guess you can see those bands, I guess, of the grays. That's a little bit more glazed, a little bit more red, part of their standards, of course. We try to stay away from the red tone to try to differentiate the building as much as possible, including the entrance of the Canco, which is predominantly gray in comparison.
Lastly, just about, I know pedestrian access is going to come up over and over because, but walking through any mall parking lot is inherently dangerous, I think. But I didn't see a bike rack anywhere.
Yeah.
We do have bicyclists in this part of the world because you can ride your bike all year round. Was there a place for bikes? Yeah, that would be nice because I'm sure there are cyclists who want to go to Tim Hortons on a Sunday morning. They'd like to lock up their bike.
Yeah, sorry. So it's certainly something that would be considered, of course, with parking. We have a lot of concrete, of course, at the back of the building, but I think we might massage the drive-through in such a way that we might have it. So I guess your parking, your bicycle parking might be near the drive out entrance.
Yeah, I'm not recommending a spot for it. I just, yeah.
We will provide one. Sorry, we will provide one. There you go, Bruce. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
I'll leave everything else to someone else. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And Chris, it's Christine, right? Thank you, Christine, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yep. Well, that explains it. Thank you for your presentation. A couple comments. First of all, I am a little concerned about the vehicle stacking. We've probably all watched what happens at McDonald's or various Tim Hortons. And I think there's a real pinch point there between cars. I could see it being backed up onto the, onto the throughway into the mall and back up onto the highway. I could see that being a problem. Any concern about that? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, we try to make it as contained as possible within the site itself. So, one thing that we positioned in terms of the drive-through is, I guess, near the garbage enclosure. I'll use my pointer. So this is actually going to be where the drive-through window is. So when you get to about this point, you're at 8 cars. So the intent was actually that we'll actually circle around the canopy where there's a bump out. And we'll come around, of course, in front of these parking stalls here. And when you get to this point, you're at 14 cars. And that's kind of the standard, I guess, with Tim Hortons in terms of their dual driving aisles, right? But yeah, if it's beyond 14 stalls, and of course, it's not necessarily, and we're talking about Tim Hortons, I'll be honest with you, right? If it was any other QSR a vendor, 14 stalls is more than enough.
Yeah.
But there would be a concern if they're going to come out spilling here. One thing that we talked about internally was to have possibly wayfinders, signs per se, to continue your parking down this aisle here.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what can be done about it. It just is a phenomenon. Tim
Right.
Hortons for sure.
You're absolutely right, though. But we certainly don't want, of course, cars come into the mall, they're going to see cars. If there's a car here, they're going to have to go around it. And that's actually quite dangerous going into oncoming traffic, right? So this was in discussions, having possibly wayfinders, possibly maybe some painted lines, drive-through stacking continued along this aisle.
That's right. It's really only from, 6 till 8 in the morning anyway. So it seems.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yes,
Wanting
yeah,
my
it's-
coffee.
I know it's pretty wild. My other concern is, and I don't know that it can be addressed at all, Tim Hortons, and eventually, or they want it to be 24 hours and the drive-through. Any concern about, Happy Jack's is right across there and then all the homes across the highway about the noise? Those drive-through things are very loud, especially at night. And I know I've heard from certainly people who live close to the McDonald's that they hear every single order all through the night. I don't know that it's anything that can be addressed here. I think it's just something that we.
That is a good point. That person must be dreaming about, McDonald's
Yeah,
every
exactly.
night, right?
Yeah, super sorry.
There's no word yet in terms of if either of these facilities will be 24 hours,
Mhm.
but there certainly is a possibility.
Sure.
There's some consideration, of course, with some other jurisdictions where we found that menu boards in particular to be 9 meters away from the property line.
Mhm.
Now, we will be beyond 9 meters when it comes to the residential areas. As far as, would it travel past that? I'm not sure, I'll be honest with you. I guess, one thing that would always help, of course, with sound itself is some kind of sound screening,
Mhm.
some kind of fence. But just thinking about, I guess where that fence would be, our menu board would be, I guess, on the northeast side. So to cover that sound, we would have to have, I guess, a fence kind of along the highway, which isn't the most appealing, I guess. It would conceal a lot of the building. It's certainly not out of the question, though. We can think about, what that fence might look like. I guess an alternative is more trees.
More trees, and even if the soundboard is turned so that it's projecting not towards either.
Right.
Or towards the.
So we actually similar, we do a lot of this drive-through restaurants type. And then so we have a similar situation, a project we did in Calgary.
Oh, okay.
So this one, actually, that one is a little close to the residential. We looked at this one. This one is a little further away. But what we did is we actually put a sound barrier just close to that menu board.
Right.
And then also mention like trees. Yeah, that's another thing we can accommodate. So that's something we can take a look into that and then address it. And then we might gonna talk to someone who specialized in this kind of stuff and see.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think it's
that's-
something people don't realize how disruptive
Exactly.
it is
Exactly.
in the night hours, especially.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
And I only had one other note. I'm pleased to see this is the landscaping one. Really pleased to see some native species. I would love to see more, of course. They stand up tougher than just about anything out there, and do all the. They've been around for a long time, so would love to see more incorporated. But I'm glad to see that there are some. So, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I will ask Ian, and then following Ian, I'll ask Mary for her comments. So Ian, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. can you hear me properly? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh,
perfectly.
okay. I have quite a few, thanks for the presentation on landscaping. I have quite a few issues to sort out. Just in the last explanation, you were talking about the drive-through. Could you tell me again where the entrance to the drive-through is and where the exit is?
Absolutely.
Using the pointer.
So the intent was that actually the drive-through is actually here. This is
Oh,
actually the
okay,
drive-through.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
yeah.
In the last discussion, it seemed like you were pointing to the other end where you would come in and end up. But I know you guys have done a lot of drive-throughs, so you wouldn't get that wrong. The building, as much as you would like it to look like two buildings, the building is actually one building, and it'll be perceived as one building because it is an individual building sitting on its own in the middle of a sea of cars on a highway. So the idea of trying to separate those buildings may not be as appropriate as you might think. First of all, you have two entrances where people are going to go. And people are going to go to either one or the other or both. And they may come out of one and go to the next one. And you mentioned about the canopy, for instance, where you were asked to, or you discussed it, and you actually provided a canopy for the entrance doors for some protection. When I look on the drawings, the canopy seems not adequate. It just seems very short. It looks like it might only be 2 feet wide. And in fact, if it's going to be a canopy, and we do have rain in this part of the country, I think it should be at least a meter or 1.5 meters even, because it does not provide any cover at all, especially for someone, say, in a wheelchair who is trying to negotiate the front door. There isn't any space there. It's very shallow. And the same depth is on both canopies. And why wouldn't you consider connecting those canopies so you can actually walk from the C-store to the Tim Hortons undercover? Well, what's the point of cutting it off? I think the logic in that is not thought through sufficiently. So that's one big thing. The other thing is I was looking at the circulation on the site. The circulation on the site, it just looks like it's going to be extremely chaotic. We have drivers coming from the highway and entering into the canopy to get gas. So they're making a right turn into the parking lot and driving under the canopy and then exiting on the other side where the other cars are parked in front of the Tim Hortons, because they'll be there. The cars will be there. People will be going to Tim Hortons just to get a quick fix of something. They're going to be backing out, and you have cars coming, and the exchange of the way that the vehicles travel, both cars will be on the wrong side. Your exit from the canopy, if you're making a left turn to come back out into the mall, general mall area, you will be going at cross purposes with the cars that are backing out, or even cars that are entering. You will have two sets of cars crossing as they go past on the wrong side. And I find that really tricky. It seems like, okay, so that's another point, the circulation. You have cars exiting from the back of the Tim Hortons, and it's an incredibly serious blind spot that you have. The cars are sticking out and trying to get out behind a very solid building. So that's a really big issue. We have other Tim Hortons that have done similar things, but not as bad as this one, where I have seen cars trying to nudge out and other cars trying to get past the Tim Hortons, and they're almost very close, near collisions. Everybody stops because we're not going terribly fast, but somebody wants to go ahead and somebody wants to go ahead first. So you get that. The cars exiting behind the building are hidden. And I think that's a very serious problem. So I will let you think that one through and unravel that problem. The other main concern, well, not main, there's several main ones. So the circulation is a big thing. There are going to be pedestrians coming from the mall to Tim Hortons, and they're going to walk, because if they have already parked their car in the parking lot for the mall, they're not going to go to their car and get in their car and drive next to Tim Hortons and park. They're just going to walk across the road and say, let's go have a quick coffee, and they will walk across the parking lot. The parking lot that's been designed for the mall is not pedestrian friendly, and it is not an accessible set of conditions. So you will have people walking down the drive aisles trying to get across. That's really difficult. And I think that that condition and that problem needs to be sorted out very carefully, because there's going to be traffic from the Tim Hortons to the mall and from the mall to the Tim Hortons. So there are people going to be walking back and forth across that busy, side next to the building on the left side of the Tim Hortons there. So either raised walkways or something that's really clearly marked, or some sort of accommodation, because the way it's drawn and the way the building is located, the corner of that building is where everybody will exit that building. And that's right in the middle of a drive aisle on the other side. So somebody has to make a choice. Are they going to walk to the right or to the left? It's going to be hesitation, and nobody knows what's happening in that whole area. It is, I see it as a real problem and a real disaster area, apart from cars meeting other cars in that circulation space. And people always try to drive the wrong way. They may come in from the other end of the mall and try to drive in front of the C-store to get into the drive aisle. And you have cars exiting the gas station, and you have cars backing out from the few parking spots you've got. It really needs some clarity in how those vehicle movements should occur at that point. We'll leave the circulation for now. Talking about the building, and apart from the fact that it would be a good idea to have a continuous canopy across the front, the building is sitting in the parking lot, and the building seems to be oriented in only one direction. In other words, if you happen to be coming in through that main entrance and you're going to get gas, you'll see the front of the building. The other sides of the building, you're presenting the back end of a building to the highway. If you're driving south and coming from Qualicum to Parksville, and you are coming into the mall, all you're seeing is the back end of buildings, and those buildings are located on the public highway in a very prominent location. And I don't think you've paid enough attention to how those buildings look, because it looks like you prevented the back of buildings to the public. This is the highway. This is not the back end of a building site. It is how you would approach it. And I don't think you thought, well, I shouldn't say that, you might have, but I think more consideration should be given to the way that the buildings appear, as if you were driving south towards from Qualicum to, say, Parksville downtown. Because if you look at some of that particular picture there, on the bottom right-hand side, you see a Tim Hortons sign, a logo where it says, oh, there's a Tim Hortons there. You don't see anything else on this building here. You get a clue about what it might be because of the Canco logo on the sides. But just the back of this building, it really looks like the back of a building. There's some blank entrance doors. There's no forgiving features at all. And I don't think it has addressed the presence that it has on a main public highway. So I think you should think that one through a little bit more. And I agree with the comment that, I forget his name, the second, Bruce. It would be good to maybe thicken the extensions of those logo signs so that there is a small return. That's a very good observation, so that they don't look like a frontier kind of aesthetic, where it's just a flat front to the buildings. And I'm concerned about some of the landscaping in terms of with the height of landscaping near the entrances where cars exit and cars come into the site. At the back end of the drive-through, you've lost the picture now. Can you get the site plan? Yeah, at the back end where you exit the site, there's an enclosure for garbage, and just above that, there's an island with something growing on it, and I wasn't quite sure what height those shrubs were or whatever they were. But you will have cars exiting the rear end, exiting the drive-through, and they have to look at other cars coming into the site from the right, because they'll be coming off the highway on that slip road as well. That is a road, isn't it? Up there?
Sorry, you're referring, yeah,
Yes,
this,
that is a road, isn't it?
that is a road.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that is
cars will be
accessible,
coming
yes.
off the highway, coming there, and they're looking at getting into Tim Hortons, so they're cutting across there. It would be good if the landscaping buffer right on that little island, no, come down. No, in front, next to the garbage enclosures.
Oh, okay.
In that,
Sorry.
well,
Yes.
where the two driveways intersect. If it should be lower, that's all I'm trying to say, and I
Right in
think
here.
it is. I
Yeah,
think
so
it
we
is.
have buffer landscape, like higher
Yes.
shrubs
That's the one.
along the garbage enclosure to
Yeah.
about there.
Mhm.
And then we have lower perennials and
Right.
lower grasses in that area.
Okay. In terms of the loading dock, you have a loading bay at the very front of the building, it seems. And is that for supplying materials to Tim Hortons?
Yes, it would be actually for Tim Hortons as well as the C-store, yes.
Would that be the best location for that? Because it seems contradictory to how you'd be getting into a building of that nature. Wouldn't there be a back door on the?
There is a back door. There was a consideration, of course, of moving the loading stall, but we were more concerned, I guess, with, access, vehicle traffic, I guess, with having
Right.
another loading car vehicle embedded within the site.
Mhm.
So hence why we moved it to the outside here. There were consideration, of course. Yeah, I see your point, and this is something that we address with our clients as well. This one thing that we wanted to make sure with them is that, hey, like, are you okay with having a loading stall in the front? And although not ideal,
Yeah.
and with consideration, of course, with the vehicle circulation of having a bigger vehicle in here, again, with some of the congestion that you mentioned, they were willing to compromise and say, yeah, we can have loading in the front.
It's not a good location, but it could be solved with scheduling. I don't know, maybe the deliveries arrive at midnight. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it is not in a good location, quite honestly, because those vehicles are large. And of course, they obscure all of the way that people look in terms of safety, where are people coming from? Where are the cars coming from? And then you have a very large vehicle parked in the most obvious spot. And I don't think it's a good spot for that. So I just see some kind of biggish issues with your circulation, pedestrian movement. One of our members actually sent in and I don't know if you mentioned it, whether I missed it, a verbal, a printed document because she wasn't able to be here. And she was concerned about the handicap space and wanted you to consider possibly 2 handicap spaces, or I don't know, it seems like the handicap space is on the wrong side. Very often it is not the driver that is handicapped, it's the passenger. And the common space for exiting a car with a handicapped person is probably on the other side, unless they're a passenger in the back seat. So I don't know. I think that needs to be thought out again, which side of a handicap space that the unloading should be. Usually, we'd have two handicap spaces with a common space in the middle. So depending on your vehicle, whether the person is sitting on the left side or the right side of the car, they may pick the right one and solve their own problems like that, but they have no choice here because you only have one space. So I think that needs to be kind of thought about. I think that's all for the moment. I think we have enough to discuss here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments here. So I was jotting some of your notes here, of course, with the canopies. Sorry to start from the beginning with the canopies. You're right. I think 2 feet, when you think about when you open the door, that's already 3 feet. The edge of the door is already 3 feet. Someone's going to walk beyond the door leaf. So I think something substantial is at least 4 feet. I think that's something worthy to consider to make it a true weather protected entrance. Vehicle circulation, that is a tough one. Considering the size of the site, it's quite a pickle. Hence why the limited space of our building, we're going with the minimum sizes of both of these clients. One thing that we went back and forth with, and I say it essentially because we spent a little time, this canopy here. There was thoughts as clients want a certain distance away with our canopy, so they're not walking too far and to and from the entrance. But of course we're talking about Parksville. Like it's not like it's a heavy winters here. It's not going to be like that cold. So there might be a possibility of moving this, repositioning the canopy further back. And that will alleviate a lot of the circulation. And of course, some more wayfinders on the fuel pumps themselves, the dispensers, the columns themselves, to say, this is, of course, I guess also painted markers saying this is the direction of travel. Sorry, I guess coming from the south to the north. So that somebody that is feeling can obviously see someone that's either coming out of those TDL stalls or Tim Hortons stalls versus the other way, of course. And of course, we're dealing with stacking and people waiting for parking, for fuel pumps to become free. So that's something that we were talking and went back and forth with, positioning the canopies further back to alleviate some of that circulation.
Would there be a consideration or thought about rotating the entire canopy position so you don't ever exit the canopy in conflict with other vehicle movements on the side? I'll let you.
Yeah, certainly something to consider. I want to believe that we've explored that configuration, but looking at now, there's a problem, I guess, with the storage tanks. These storage tanks actually are they're 15 feet into the ground. So I guess to have a safe excavation, you have to go, I guess, 1-to-1 in terms of slope. So 45-degree slope. And so of course that limits to where our canopy columns could be before we reach foundations and so forth.
I don't want to argue, and I'm sorry.
No,
if I
but
sound like
something to
I'm
consider.
arguing.
Yeah.
Anything in the ground is done way ahead of time, and so long as it's designed and built structurally to do the job, it will. And the tanks are buried. The only thing you have to be concerned about is the circulation for the delivery tankers to be able to navigate around and be able to drop their hoses and fill the underground tanks. I have designed some gas stations on very limited sites, and it is amazing what you can do if you have limited space. You seem to have a fairly decent amount of site for moving tanks or doing what you want. And still come out successfully, I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. We'll certainly explore that. Yeah, I think rotating at 180 degrees, or sorry, not 180, 90 degrees is something to consider. Yeah. We'll certainly try it out. Yeah, and we'll certainly make sure we reach the clearances. You're right, though. Like it's certainly something to, and then that will certainly alleviate people the direction of parked cars in the canopy. Of course, not facing Tim Hortons, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to ask Mary if you would like to make your comments or if you have any questions for that
Can I,
applicant.
sorry,
Yes.
can I just make a comment before we jump away?
Okay, sure. Okay, sorry,
Because there
Mary.
was a good point about the lack of visibility at the exiting the drive-through. Two suggestions. One is, of course, a concave mirror mounted somewhere so you can see what's coming the other way. The other one is maybe we could make it right turn only out of the drive-through. That way they wouldn't be coming back into the congestion.
Mm.
A concave mirror mounted somewhere in the landscaping or corner of the building so you can actually see the traffic coming the other way before you pull out. And the second one would just maybe making it right turn only as well. So they wouldn't be coming back towards the main drive aisle.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Okay, Mary, if you would like to speak, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, I would just like to say thank you so much for everyone's comments. They're so informed and so insightful, and I'm sure that the proponents appreciate all the thoughts. I do have some things noted here. Yes, I was very interested in sound. And where the sound, and as I think it was Christine mentioned, that, you know, the sound can really carry, and particularly in the evening and at night, and positioning the speakers so that it's not going out towards the highway and to residences across the street will of course be helpful. And it looks like that's the case. And given the fact that that area is raised, that there's quite a slope down to the highway, that I would think that even a reasonably low sound barrier would go a long way to buffering any sound coming out of there. So I'm not 100% clear about where the speakers are, but I know it makes a huge difference. And from personal experience, I've been able to influence that when things have gone in closer to my own neighborhood. So it does make a difference. The bike racks, absolutely. I was wondering where they were. And we do have quite an active cycling groups in the area. So not only a few, but they will come en masse to join for coffee someplace. So they might be visiting the Tim Hortons, and also the pedestrian access points. I agree totally that, suggestions about wayfinding for the vehicles entry and exit and the right turn only, but also for pedestrians. And looking at, I'm sorry, her name has escaped me right now, but starts with an M. But her written comments, she was not able to be here about having a second accessible parking. I was even wondering if it might make sense for that to be across, not right in front of the building, but over in one of those angled parking areas just over by the buffer, and that there's shown a pedestrian access point. Now, I don't know if that links to directly going on to that sidewalk, or if that sidewalk has a raised curb. But if it didn't, if it could flow there, then perhaps that would actually be a reasonable, a nice spot for people to access, even with with a handicap parking area. So I just wondered that looking at it. Also, regarding lights, first of all, when I did see that it was going to be a Tim Hortons, I thought how nice the Tim Hortons in the main part of town has lights that I don't know the term for them, my apologies, but they go down, they shine onto the building. They are not backlit, but it looks like this one would be backlit. I'm wondering, the fact that it's not a bright white makes it a little bit better. And also the fact that it's sort of inside the shopping center area and not out in a place that would bother neighbors. But I am wondering if those lights are dimmable. I have seen, I have read that in some areas, lights can be on some kind of a timer so that they do go lower or turn off at night. And I would hope that that might be the case. But even when if it does go 24 hours, I would I just hope that the lights will not be too intrusive, that we would truly be trying to go towards dark sky recommendations. I appreciate that the lights around the side seem to be downward facing, you know, coming out of the soffits. Unfortunately, we do have in town in Parksville some examples of some very intrusive lighting, and I would just like to see us get away from that and have something that absolutely highlights the business. I don't want to go against business opportunities, but at the same time in ways that don't that are not intrusive to neighbors or negatively affect bird flight and the like. So I guess those were the big things that I noticed. I appreciate all the comments about the circulation and the need for wayfinding. But for me, sound, lights, I didn't hear much talk about that. Bike parking, yes, pedestrian, and really good wayfinding for both pedestrians and vehicles. Also, there was a mention about the deliveries in the loading area. I would certainly not like to see deliveries made at night. It's incredible how far those backups horns travel that noise, and people need to be able to sleep at night. It's very important for health. So I would actually discourage any deliveries at night, but you know, anytime after 6:30 or so starts to become a reasonable time. So thank you very much. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mary. And I should have addressed you as Counselor Mary, just so
Okay.
that our applicants know who's speaking. Thank you very much. I'm curious, were Maureen's comments provided to the applicant, or should I do? We've already touched on a few of them.
Yes, we didn't provide them to the applicant. You're welcome to read them or bring them up. And also just to mention too, quite often, I know it's 3:25 now and we still have the recommendations. But you may also want to just go around the panel one more time just to see if there's anything else.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Well, one of our panel members wasn't able to attend, but she did write in a few comments, and she is an advocate for accessibility. And so a lot of her comments pertain to that, but Ian did bring up her main one, which was about the exiting, what side the space is on, and the idea of adding another accessible parking space to make your project even better. Okay. Good. Yeah. So she again also speaks to wayfinding and signage and ensuring that that you have a clear. Hang on, maybe I will. Let's see. Yes. So the accessibility. She's concerned that it's a lot of uses put into one site, that Tim Hortons is known to be busy, and that there's going to be conflict with the traffic and customers and the gas station. So concerned about the traffic movement at peak times. So it's just a comment. And the limited sidewalk area in front of the units may be difficult for to maneuver if you're in a mobility aid. So I suppose if you are looking at reciting a few things that may allow you to increase that sidewalk at the front of the building, or improve the sort of frontage of that building on a few levels, whether for your bike racks, you know, pedestrians. I noticed Tim Hortons doesn't usually provide, not a few places provide outdoor seating, but that's not something included here. And I'm sure it's because of the size of the Tim Hortons, but it's a good consideration. I'll just add that in. Also, Maureen speaks to the exit from the drive-through, which we've already talked about, making sure that's clear. And she brings up one more very specific item regarding Tim Hortons is to please provide one access button that will open both doors, the door from the outside and the door from the vestibule into the restaurant, as well as buttons to exit And additional foot push door openers are definitely appreciated. An access button inside and outside for the convenience store door, please, as well. So that's from her perspective, speaking about the design, the accessibility of the design. And then she also talks about one thing my comments are almost pretty much all the same. Everyone has brought up, I think, similar concerns to me. And thank you again for your presentation. One thing that Maureen brings up, and I'm also concerned about, is none of us referenced the skating rink right to the corner. And I think you're going to see your most traffic going from there to the Tim Hortons. And so ensuring that safe pedestrian connectivity from the ice rink to the Tim Hortons, I think that's really important. So thinking about whether it's just that you're providing safe crossings or marked crossings or signage or something, but that's definitely going to be where you see, I think, the most movement of people, pedestrians. And I also wondered, I think the site has a lot of room for more trees, and with our increasing temperatures, we all like to see more trees because they help mitigate some of our climate change issues. And I think you have room, and I would love to see you have another layer of trees even going down that bank. And that may also help mitigate the noise, and also maybe work with this sort of back of building kind of thing, work a little better. So yeah, I could just see a lot more canopy coverage from the trees on site. That's my only additional comment then from what everyone else has said. So I think what we would like to do now is try to consolidate our comments into very clear recommendations for staff. So maybe if I kind of open the floor of panel members. I know we have a comment regarding the architecture and the building facade, which we can reference from our, I know the staff really likes it when we reference the design guidelines as we're making our comments. So if we can kind of try to be creative with referencing the guidelines, that would be helpful. So in the development permit area number 5 design guidelines under architectural design and character, the first note is about the scale, size, massing, shapes, sighting, roofline, exterior finish of buildings should be sufficiently varied to avoid monotonous views from the street. So I think quite a number of our comments fit in that point A, if you would agree, that we are looking for a little more variation on the facade. I'm not sure, I don't know the architecture lingo, but if any of you would like to, we have so yes, Bruce?
I had suggested that the portions of the facade that extend above the roof level have some sort of return on them, so they don't appear to be just flat signage, that they appear to be another building element.
So, and Sarah, are you taking notes and are we trying to have the precise comment, or are you writing the precise comment?
Yeah, so a little of both. Wendy's back at her desk recording. I'm making notes as well. So
Okay.
If you could try to keep it succinct so that we can understand what the objective is. Listing the DP guideline is really helpful, as you've done. And then mentioning like specifically what things you're looking for. So the applicant has some really clear direction.
Okay. Okay. So within that, we're speaking specifically to the returns of what Bruce said.
The returns on the portions of the facade that extend above the roof.
Yes, thank you. And I've also, Ian also referenced that that there should be some consideration to the building and how it's presented on all sides, given that you're on the highway, so that we're not confronted with a backside when considering the views coming from north to this site. Yeah. Okay, so that would be part of the architectural character. As well, I'm going to reference in number 1C, the weather protection that I have a feeling we all agree with what Ian suggested of increasing the canopy, or do we all? Yes, and I thought the continuation of the canopy makes it a much more friendly site for those visiting it, and that would also, I think, help with making it feel more cohesive. Because I appreciate your point about the fact that it is one building without two uses. Yeah, so we will make that a recommendation for under. You'll just have to bear with me. I'm the landscape architect, not the architect.
Can I
Yeah,
just make one more-
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
I totally understand that you have two tenants in one building and you really want to make a difference between the two tenants. But to the public, the building is one building. And if you look at the elevation at the back, where you've gone along with one material on the top above at roof level, which is siding, I believe, and then it's suddenly there's just a line and it changes to another material where the Tim Hortons is. There's two colors up there. There's a gray and a brown. That architecturally, it doesn't help anything if you do that. Because really the building is one building. And I know that you want to create a separation, but if there was an architectural feature that you could incorporate to separate those two things, or have the same color wrapping around the building. So there's some, what you call honesty in the way that the building is put together. I mean, just running a line and then changing materials is not really a great solution. That's all. So that's to do with the aesthetics as well as the way that the materials are handled on the one building side. I mean, it's not very cohesive, the entire building.
I'd like to comment that I disagree, that the entire mall is a single building, but each storefront has its own expression. And that's what they're trying to do here, is mimic what the mall already does.
Yeah.
So I agree that they should try and make it appear as to be two separate, even though it's a single building,
It's just way
two separate uses.
Yes.
Just my opinion.
In the development permit area guidelines, there is a comment that building design should relate to an overall architectural theme. So we could say that the building needs to have that a similar language, maybe within the differentiating. Or does that make sense?
It also says to avoid monotonous views. You can read that either way.
I think there's a happy medium that maybe is not quite being achieved, is what I'm thinking. Do you think, panel?
Or maybe like Ian says, maybe there just needs to be an architectural feature in there, a bit of stone or something that just still divides them. But at least it makes a bigger statement, a bigger line. You guys are the architects.
Right, and I see your point, rather than it would appear to be just a line.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I guess to your point, and I guess with your points, I guess, is at least a more profound feature rather than just a line.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'll leave that to you to do that. I don't want to be designing it for you or saying, prescribing it,
So Ian, I agree with your comment about the rear side of the building. It's kind of blank, and I totally agree. And just having just to spruce it up a little bit, and then so it's kind of visually appealing. So that's a good comment.
Okay.
We can take a look into that, and then
Okay, great. And I didn't really state this earlier, but maybe right now, if the applicant could refrain from commenting just so we can discuss, and then would that work? Because I'm conscientious of the time. And I want to make sure we make sure we include all of our recommendations and comments. And then if we need clarity, is that okay? Because remember, they are just recommendations. So you will be able to respond to them as you move your project forward. Okay, Dariush, I think you had something you wanted to comment?
No, I just wanted to say, after all, we are recommending these things and we are giving these recommendations to you guys as a designer to basically review and go to what's the proper for project. So we're not supposed to design the project. You are the designer.
We don't want to get into that.
No. Okay, and then moving on. So I think we've sort of touched on, have we, with some clarity, touched on what the comments are regarding the architecture?
Would it be helpful if I read back what I have and then you can let me know if we've captured it all?
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
So my notes are with regards to development permit 1A, which pertains to things such as the finish and the massing, the roof line of the building. Bullet point number 1, looking at for consideration of the variation of the facade. Another bullet, return on the portions of the facade above the roof level. And another point of considering of how the building is presented on all sides. And then the last point that was talked about might also work with that guideline, which is consideration of an architectural feature to differentiate between the two businesses.
Does everyone agree with that? Okay, so now.
Sorry, I think we're missing one item, which is the weather protection.
Oh, yeah.
That is very important one.
Yeah.
I haven't got to that one yet.
Okay.
So I also have for a separate under development permit area guideline number 1C, increasing the canopy and considering the options of connecting the canopy to extend to cover both entrances.
Okay, perfect. So then moving on to some of our other points. So I think that covers the building so far. I'm going to just follow with using our development permit area number 5, number 2, landscaping and screening. And so I think if number 2, landscaping and screening E, consideration should be given to provide suitable shade trees in summer. So I was just going to use that to suggest more trees to provide more shade and in reference to that. And okay, then speaking about the site's circulation from car and pedestrian, I think we have a number of comments on those two. So I think we can fit it under accessibility of the site, which is you'll have to forgive me because I wasn't prepared to be the chair today. Tripping around. Number 5 under accessibility. So 5A, accessibility features should be integrated into the overall design concept. And I think we can speak to the pedestrian accessibility and pedestrian access sort of there, that it needs to be more integrated and considered, and that we have safe, that the pedestrian connectivity from parking to the amenities they're providing and the adjacent amenities needs to be given more consideration. Anything else? Separate.
Vehicle and pedestrian movements on the side.
Yeah, so giving more separated movement for the pedestrian from the vehicles.
You also mentioned vehicle comfort.
Oh yeah, you can. Oh yeah, you can. Please go ahead. Yeah. So then the car, the circulation of the vehicles, that we want to ensure that is that for them to consider that we want to reduce the conflicts that may arise with the current circulation plan and parking. And I do note it is a great frustration as a pedestrian, when I am a pedestrian, and there's a couple of Tim Hortons I can identify in, and I know where I am at risk when I'm walking and the car is coming out of just after picking up they've gone through the drive-through and they've just picked up their thing and they're heading out. And it's the same condition that you're creating here, where it's right up against the building and they're just popping out. And I think that's going to be where we see the pedestrians walking to get over to the ice rink, is most likely right there. And so I do think there is some pedestrian vehicle conflict issues that need to be resolved, and sighting and visibility issues regarding that. But so I'm not sure if anyone would like to summarize it, you're welcome.
Well, I think you've covered most of the points. You know, there's circulation between the cars themselves and circulation of pedestrians from the various parts of the mall, you know, to the Tim Hortons, and keeping them safe, and also safety between, you know, the pedestrians and the vehicle movements on the site, because we have, you know, the athletic thing. What's it called again?
Is it the rink, the arena,
Yeah,
the skating rink? Yeah.
The skating rink, you know,
Yeah.
which generates a lot of pedestrian movement going and coming from that building. And obviously, Tim Hortons is a magnet and will draw a lot of people back and forth. So I think, you know, the site was considered as a site that's sitting there inside some property lines, but in fact, nobody sees the property lines in the end. It's just a building on a site that all has to work, you know. So I think that whole consideration should be given to the site circulation. It's really important.
And the loading, I forgot to mention that I think a lot of us were finding the location of the loading, that I really think that needs to be reconsidered, given it's right near your corner entry to the Tim Hortons. And go ahead, Bruce.
I was just going back to the Tim Hortons drive-through exit and that whole design of that corner. I think that could fall under 5D, which is overall site layout.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I
Okay.
just wanted to comment, section 5 is really for accessibility, but you are welcome to provide comments that aren't tied to a guideline that they can just overall consider. So I can just add some bullet points in there if they don't necessarily link in, that's completely
Okay.
acceptable.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was trying to think broad accessibility as well. Okay. Yeah. Great.
We had also mentioned one more consideration of one more handicapped
Yes.
stall as well. Parking
Yes,
stall.
and how the handicap is laid out on the site to be considered, the fact that generally it's the passenger, right?
And the bike stalls.
Yes, and bike stalls, that we would like to see bike stalls, and then that we want to make sure the noise of the drive-through radio, or whatever you call it, to the ordering station is controlled with the environment. So whether you're sound baffling it or using the trees and plants, I do note you are at an advantage of being higher than the houses, and that generally helps. If you're lower, it's really hard to baffle. Okay, I'm just trying to check through my scrambling I have my papers all over. Back of building, pedestrians walk through, bicycles, and that Christine did mention that there's, or maybe it was Councillor Mary, there is a large biking community, and there's a large retirement community that buffers Parksville and within Parksville. And it is not uncommon to see a large group of cyclists show up at a coffee shop, and the greater consideration you have for that, like the more appreciation I'm sure they would have, and also just providing some outdoor amenity, whether I don't really see Tim Hortons putting benches, but sometimes you'll see a table or chair, but if you're reconsidering the orientation of your gas bar and canopy, that may open up a little bit of space for a small, outdoor amenity.
It would for sure bring more business. So if the client is looking at that, there's no question that when you're looking at that kind of population, it brings more business having outdoor tables and such.
Exactly. And I imagine this mall doesn't have a lot of that provided currently. Yeah.
Could I ask a question through the chair, through the staff, to the client? Has there ever been given any consideration to the piece of road that is to the left of the Tim Hortons? Whether that could be closed off?
And I invite you to comment, please.
So that left access lane into Wembley Mall off the highway, that was beyond the scope of this project. And that would be something that the engineering department would have to weigh in on and have conversations with the owner of the mall if they're going down that route. So that's not something that we had looked at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I don't think comment. Have we missed anything or is there anything?
Mary mentioned lighting, which is section
Oh, right,
4.
of course, lighting. So just to ensure, to try and be, I don't know the rules around the dark sky compliant lighting. I think some of your signage may not fall into that, but to be conscientious of that. I don't know if I'm not sure if it.
That's probably under guideline 4B, which is
Okay.
luminaries shall be a full cutoff louver design that prevents light spilling onto adjacent properties.
Okay, so yes, please, we'll make that recommendation. I'm not sure if
It's already a part of the guideline.
Yeah.
So we don't really have the technical expertise to evaluate their lighting at this point.
yeah, okay.
And sorry, just one
Mhm.
question. Was the lighting comment, was that pertaining to the overall site or just signage or?
I think Councillor Mary's comment was generally for the overall site, I believe. I don't know if you want to comment.
Sure. I guess both. I understand that with the gas bar, the canopy, I mean, they're very well lit. It does at least shine straight down, so there shouldn't be too much spillage. I was concerned that, and a little disappointed to see that the Tim Hortons has gone to a backlit sign I think that's what they're called, rather than those, curved sort of a different approach, a different style. So it's just that they can be quite intrusive. But I also know that some backlit signs, they're not all created equally. Some are extremely bright, with their LED, but there's a whole range of strength of those. So I've seen some that are just terrible. You just, from, I don't know, probably almost a half a kilometer away, you can see them. So I'm just hopeful that that's being considered and that the light signs, I don't think that's correct, but anyway, the backlit signs are not overly bright.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that we've overlooked in our comments? I was trying to figure out a way for them to enhance their environmental protection one, but it would be a stretch, so I'm not going to make a comment.
So if you don't mind, I was trying to make notes.
Yes.
I'm not sure how complete they are, so I'll just read through. So we've done
Yes.
the building ones. Guideline 2E, which is consideration of providing additional trees. Guideline 5A, pedestrian access and accessibility should be reconsidered. with specific focus of separating the movements between the pedestrian and vehicle routes. Then I have a general point for consideration of the overall site circulation, movement, and visibility of vehicles, parking, as well as pedestrians, and eliminating potential conflicts. Another bullet of consideration of providing one additional accessibility stall and relocating the current accessibility stall to the other side of the ramp. Provision of a bike rack. Another point of sound mitigation for the drive-through considerations. Now, Bruce, you mentioned, I didn't get the whole point, but I've just noted reconsideration of safety at the drive-through exit. Not sure if you had more specifications on that one.
Well, I had suggestions, but I mean, they can probably think it through.
Okay. All right. And then consideration of the loading space. And the last one was 4B. Consideration of lighting and light spillage, as well as backlit signage.
That sounds like it captures everything. Does everyone agree? Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. So can I, if our conversation is done and we're satisfied, can I ask someone to make a motion to accept? Oh, sorry, not yet. Am I jumping ahead?
Need a mover and a seconder for the minutes.
Oh, the
Or
minute.
for- Not the minutes, sorry, for the recommendations.
First, the next, okay, I was gonna do, that's what I was gonna do.
Oh,
Okay, sorry. To accept the project as presented with the recommendations. Okay,
Sure, I so move.
Bruce, and a seconder?
oh, I'm just gonna pause you there for a minute.
Yeah,
Sorry.
did I say that wrong?
Well, I forgot to mention the very beginning, sort of the lead in to the guidelines as far as what it is that we would like from the applicants. So there's a couple of different options. We can accept the development permit as presented. We can request additional information and have them work with staff. Or you can request for them to come back to the panel and be reconsidered. So you have a couple different approaches you can think about.
Okay, so panel, where, the first one was to accept it as presented, but with the recommendations?
There's actually some sample resolutions in your binder.
Oh,
So in your
thank you.
duotang on page 2 that you can take a look at.
Thank you, okay. Okay, so it sounds like is number 3 what we might be asking for?
Or is it number 2?
or
Or
is
is a variance that, is that what that?
Well, there isn't a variance that we're considering because we don't have the data for the parking. So it would either be request for additional information, which is where you accept the proposal as in principle, and the applicant can revisit the following aspects. And then the other option is if you would like revisions, is that they do the revisions and then represent to the panel.
I don't like to always ask for people to come back, but we're asking for quite a bit of change. And so it's up to us if we think we need to see that.
Do you want a vote or what?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I think we have to decide which one.
I think 3 would be fine. I don't
3?
think we need to see it again. I mean, we talked about a lot, but each item wasn't major,
Mhm.
you know.
Okay. How does everyone else feel?
I'm okay with that, with
Okay.
the 3. Was it 3 that we went for? Yeah, 3. Request for, recommend that it be accepted in principle, but revisit the following aspects.
Okay, and Dariush, do you That's okay. I can be okay with that. How about you, Ian?
Yeah.
I know the staff will work with them they've heard everything we've said. Yeah. And Mary, Counselor Mary,
I like it. You guys are awesome. So whatever you think.
okay, thank you.
No, sorry about the you guys. It's because I'm
Okay.
on Zoom mode, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So how do you feel, Ian?
Yeah, it's okay. It's just that it's quite a lot that we've been asking for. So I think we need to know that this stuff has been addressed. So I guess it's number 3. I'm not 100% sure.
Sarah, do you want to ask?
It's completely up to your discretion.
Okay.
Can I ask where you're traveling from? Where are you traveling from? Calgary.
Yeah.
All of you?
Yeah.
Lower
Yeah.
mainland.
I think we can, I think, so I'll make a motion or I'll ask someone to accept the motion that that the advisory panel recommends to council that development permit application, sorry, I don't have the number. This development permit application, I can be more formal. Where is our notes? Here it is. Okay. So that the advisory design panel recommends to council that development permit application number 3060, is this right? PDP 142? Okay, great. Located, should I read that or is that enough? Okay, thank you very much. Be accepted in principle and that the applicant revisit the following aspects, which are summarized in the recommendations that we will be sending to you. Is that good? Okay, so do I have some first person? Thank you, Bruce, and seconder. Okay, great, excellent. Oh, and all in favor, thank you. Is everyone in, okay? Good, thank you. And I believe with that, am I able to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting? Okay, could I ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Ian, and seconder, Christine. Thank you very much for your time and patience today, and thank you for your presentation. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Mary, as well.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye now.
Yeah.
Did you get stuck?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just
That's yours. Okay.
that road, the paving.
I don't know what they were doing, but it seems like there was